Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here out of Dallas, and I got my compadre here.
Yeah, Jaggy in Copenhagen, Denmark.
And today I finished reading this really amazing book, Automation Services. Actually, I don't have a cover in front of me here, but Automation Services, Robots in the Future of Work by Leslie Wilcox and Mary Lasty. And they had quite a few, really. It was a really great book. I highly recommend it. Yeah, this is one of the graphs or charts that was in the book. And I just thought it'd be a fun thing to talk through. So those of you, we'll try to announce the topics that we're talking about if you're just listening to this, so you can follow along fine, but there is a table here for those of you looking at the video. What I loved, just the overall concepts, was so basically the table's titled Three Philosophical Views on the Nature of Technology and Humanity, and they basically, on the left, they go down through like the different types of concepts or issues, and then the three different philosophical views are the optimist, the relativist, and a pessimist. So basically, your glass is half full. Your glass is actually, no, wait a minute. Your glass is half full. How do I say that? I'm gonna say or half empty. But the middle one, I'm not sure how to say that, because they're like, well, I'm not sure if it's half full or half empty. It just depends.
Yeah, it just depends. It's filled with something.
Yeah, there's something in there. So the very first one, let's start on the automation effects. And Jackie, we'll alternate. So we leading. Mm-hmm. So you'll take the next row here. So for the optimist, automation effects is humanity is liberated. The relativist is humanity determines the effects. And a pessimist would say power is centralized and powerless humans are enslaved. Okay, for me, like you're not going to catch me being a pessimist on this one. And actually, for me, I fall straight up into the optimist side of. I don't think I can take the middle row in this one. Generally speaking, I'm definitely a big fan of automating technology, and that it's good for humanity and for most people.
Yeah, I'm also mostly optimistic about this, but. The middle one, humanity determines the effects. I'm not really sure, because I think that too many interests are involved, where a company or a state or even just private person might be very, very interested in automating whatever it might be if it can benefit them. So that can benefit the company, it can benefit the country, it can benefit whoever, and they'll automate it with the best intentions, but they might not have thought it through, right? So at least from a pessimistic side. So, but to me, I'm still pretty sure that humanity will at some point be liberated by it, instead of having. Yeah.
Well, why don't you take the next one?
Yeah, who wins? That's the question. So the optimist would say everyone. The relativist would say those who participate in the design and application. And the pessimist would say owners and managers. Yeah, and again here I'm mostly with the optimist, because I actually believe that everybody would win from automating jobs, at least if humanity keeps on the course that we are on right now. Still, maybe because I'm optimistic from looking at how humanity is actually doing, and I believe that cutting back on repetitive tasks that humans find very boring very quickly, that is a win. I can't see that as anything else.
Yeah. For me, and actually I didn't share, I had this other one I put up, and Jack and I were chatting before, but they, in actually a different book from the same authors, they have the triple win scenario, and they talk about, with RPA and automation. RPA is robotics process automation, if you don't know. But there's typically you see shareholder value, which is usually like you save money and this and that. but customer value. So the end customer actually benefits because they get products, possibly round the clock, or it's done in a much faster time. And then there's the employee value gets increased. So the employees actually win. So I totally disagree with the owners and managers are the ones that quote unquote win out of this. Cause I think at the minimum, we can see just those three groups I just talked about. Having said that, and we'll get into it, I think a bit more later. There are people who definitely at some point will lose their job, right? Possibly for this. Those people aren't necessarily the people that are going to be hired for the more interesting and fun jobs. And that's usually the thing that the argument is, like, we create jobs and we lose jobs, but hey, jobs are created that are actually more interesting and fun. But even if they don't lose jobs and they keep everybody, the employees have a much more interesting job because they're not doing the mundane. That's right now with RPA in particular. That's what we're automating. I think if we get into, once we start doing more of the AI, artificial intelligence or cognitive intelligence type stuff, it's very possible that like we'll be cutting even highly skilled people. So at some point, I'm a bit more in the middle of the road on it. But I think for right now, especially here in the United States, we it's a win-win for virtually everybody. In the long run, maybe some of the poorer countries that don't have a skilled force, because they also went into the cost efficiencies of a typical, if I remember this right, a typical U.S. employee was around $65,000 on average. Outsourcing it dropped it to, I don't know, $30,000 or $20,000. So that was why a lot of jobs go to, let's say, India or China or wherever. But the RPA, the program solution, is like $7,000 to do. So it's really right now. There's, I think, starting to see they're actually still saying they see outsourcing growing at a higher rate. It's still going to go up because more and more businesses haven't adopted RPA yet, right? So it's not going to take over right away. But at some point, I think we'll see a difference in that. But it's not going to be hit too hard in the more advanced civilizations. It's the countries that are that bottom rung that have a lot of very low skilled labor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say that outsourcing has been in the works, or what you would call it, for many years. I can't even remember how many years that's
absolutely
been a thing.
Sure.
That kind of accumulated. So yeah, it might still be rising, but I'm sure that automating processes will do the same thing, but maybe even faster. So yeah, outsourcing has been happening at an increasing rate, but if process automation becomes a household and reliable enough, then I'm sure that will be adopted even quicker, by even more. And it's not long ago when I saw, maybe it was last year, Google had this show, I can't remember what they call it, where they had their artificial assistant actually call a hairdresser, is that the right word? A hairdresser, and book an appointment over the phone with a human-like voice, with human-like interaction with the person in the hairdresser. And it managed to actually book a haircut appointment, but not at the exact time the human that asked for, but still within a frame of something that could be. So it was a great show of what a Google Assistant can actually do right now.
Right now. Yeah, with some limits.
Tests.
Yeah, the limits to it.
But yeah, at this point, I was calling a hairdresser, hearing what she said, answering her, and actually ordering the haircut. And that happened without user interaction.
Wow.
So the user just told the assistant, book me a woman's haircut on Thursday at 12. And the assistant ended up actually booking a woman's haircut on Thursday at 11, because the hairdresser didn't have a time at 12. So again, maybe that's a setting, maybe it was just whatever. It was just to show that it didn't choke on not being able to actually
Right.
get the specific time. So,
Right.
but to me, that's an amazing.
Yeah.
Right here, I'm not sure that it's in the actual Google speakers right now, but at least it was the actual Google Assistant that was doing it. So.
I'm a little nervous because that was my other job, is that I call places and book haircut appointments. So I am getting a little scared.
Yeah, but you get what I mean, right? So that could be
that's very impressive.
Airline ticket. It could be a pizza. It could be any kind of thing where you would actually call the place and order an item.
Yeah.
That
well,
could,
I know.
Yeah.
With my Echo, I can use Alexa to order a pizza. I hope she doesn't actually. Oh, good, she didn't hear me. Because yeah, it is amazing. Granted, that's your preset certain things, but it's still the general concept, right?
Yeah, and again, I don't know, because it just called the hairdresser. That has probably already been put in which hairdresser to call, or it had determined it from your favorites or whatever it might have been.
Right.
Lots of questions can be asked about it, but to me, it was still the idea of you telling a smart device to order your haircut, and it didn't just send an API request to the haircut salon's program. No, it actually picked up the phone. Didn't pick up the phone, but it made a call to a hairdresser and interacted as human as possible with her. So this makes any kind of hairdresser appointment possible, because the hairdresser doesn't need to invest in anything. They just need to have their phone as always, and everybody would be able to still order a haircut. Right. So yeah.
I think we already kind of cut. I'll talk to it real quickly here, but excuse me. But the who loses, right? The optimist says no one. The relativist says it's marginalized populations who do not participate, and the pessimist says workers and those who cannot adapt. Actually, for me, I'm kind of between the relativist and the pessimist here, which is what I brought up earlier. Right? Is there are going to be some people who are hurt by this. Part of it, like, so for inside the U.S., and I can mention a friend of mine who he was an older gentleman and basically didn't keep up with technology, and at some point he got laid off, and then he had a really hard time finding a job. Right? It's one of those things. It's why I do my best to stay sharp on technology. Is I'm getting to that age where people look at you and they kind of wonder if you can keep up, right? And I think the ones that don't participate, those are the third world countries. Sorry, go ahead, John.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say, even if I wanted to be the optimist here, saying who loses, no one, then you haven't really played, right? That's almost never possible to say. But yeah, I'd say that's overly optimistic. But to me, it depends on which time frame I put on the questions here.
That's a great point, Jackie.
If I just say, in the short run, of course, people are going to be laid off. But if you, depending on how wide you want to do it, if you're trying to look at it as a society or as humanity, which this one actually points to, then maybe you could say that nobody in humanity would lose. But again, that's maybe overdoing it a bit.
Let me jump in here, because I actually wrote one of the authors of the book. She added me on LinkedIn, or I added her and she accepted. So anyway, but I wrote her a note saying, because in this other book I'm reading from them, they talked about the benefits, and as I mentioned, it was employee value is one of them. But what I wrote them was, I'm like, because my background's in research, right? And there's such a thing as it's Cox regression, if I remember right. But basically, in research, what people realized was they were doing studies like on cancer and testing what types of cures, approaches worked better than others. Well, what they weren't taking into account is, on some of them, the people were dying off and they couldn't do a follow-up survey on those people. right? So you were biasing your results, only people that survived, and it was really, a different perspective. And I think that's the same thing here. Was in the book they talked about, oh, well, the people that we talked to that, they were so happy their job was more fun to do and more interesting and this and that. I'm like, yeah, but there were people that were cut, right?
Yeah.
And you need to go find them and say, did you hate your job so much because it was so mundane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I think, Jackie, you talked about the point in time, because if you happen to get them on the day after they're fired, they're not going to be happy, right? Mm-hmm. Having said that, either they get another job somewhere else that actually is better, right? Is less mundane. They might be better. Or B, what if there's training that actually helps educate them on having different skills to apply, right? So they might actually get a better job. But it's when you take that snapshot of at what point, right? And I totally agree with what you said there.
I'd say, taking my own workplace as an example, quite a lot of us have a lot of our plates, and seeing a task being handed off to some kind of automation here and there, that's okay. If I don't need to answer every phone call that comes in, that's great. I'll actually be able to focus a bit more on some of the problem comes if you have something that's very narrow and only really, at least in the near future, right? Because with more complex, with multiple types of scenario or different types of things that you actually do in your employment, then you won't be cut from bits and pieces being automated. But at some point, the company will have the need for lesser workers.
Yeah. So, the book, mostly everyone at the jobs, that none of they had like 4 deep dives and a couple other ones, but they said, for the most part, the companies didn't cut jobs. They reallocate people to more interesting and more things that they could leverage and use them, not responsibly, correctly, right? Leverage their humans is doing it. So they were happy. But I agree, at some point, it will reduce. The other great thing is, of course, is it's scalable for RPA, is you can scale up and down easily with it.
Yeah.
And it is a big benefit.
I had an example again from my own daily work. And that is that our company takes in a lot of different calls from over 1 million. We have more than 1 million customers, right? So of course we get a lot of different types of calls from them, and the call center very busy, of course. And some of it has been outsourced to a company that just does that.
Mm-hmm.
They just take the phone and send people on the right way or whatever. And a company like that has only phonies, or whatever you call people who
head southeast on Kilburn,
they would benefit immensely from something that was able to actually do that. And then I can see that everybody there are actually just taking the phone, and now you buy a system that can actually take the phone and connect people correctly. Yeah, some people will have to be cut in that situation, right? It really depends on the complexity at this point, because at some point, I don't doubt that almost any type of job can actually be automated, or any small piece of a job can be separately automated. Yeah.
Why don't you grab the next one here?
Motto. The Optimist would say, rising tides rises all ships. Relativist would say, we decide our own fates. The Pessimist would say, our primary responsibility is to our shareholders. How do you feel about those, Joe?
I would say, actually, the Pessimist, I have no problem. I don't personally think of that as being a pessimist. It's your charter, when you're the business, your charter is to make money. And so I don't really view that as a pessimist. I think it's a different angle at it. The relativist, we decide our own fates. I don't know. That seems like kind of not a very hard stance at all. But I understand the point of the rising tides raise all ships. They're just trying to say everyone benefits from this, right? It comes in and everyone wins. And again, I think it's close. I think there's a huge amount of benefits to a lot of people.
I'd say one of the ones that I see in this aspect is automatic drivers. I couldn't find the correct word. Autonomous, that was the one. Autonomous vehicles where, let's say that everybody gets one, or we kind of slowly outphase all the privately owned cars and just use Lyft and Uber and whatnot to get around, because it's just way cheaper to just have a subscription for Uber or Lyft or whoever it might be. And as soon as I ask for the car, within 3 minutes, a car is at my door.
A new car.
A new car.
Nice car.
A nicely smelling car with leather seats or whatever it might be. A great car. Really, really nice designed and whatever, in my environmentally correct or whatever you might like. But the thing is, at some point, others, drivers, taxi drivers, it might be long haul chauffeurs or whatever, people, truckers and stuff like that. They will, of course, be hit by this. But as a society where nobody is actually sitting in a car, not doing anything productive other than transporting themselves, where now all of a sudden people stop having their own car. I think it was Lyft's CEO who said at one point that a car is, what was it he said? 74% of a car's lifetime, it actually just sits still.
I'm surprised it's not higher. Yeah,
it might have been higher. I will try to remember the correct number, but it's at least, it's very high. It might only be used 14% of the time or something, but at least it was something worth for. But the thing is just that makes a lot of sense for someone with a hauling service like Lyft to kind of emphasize on that. But the general idea is, how much is society going to save by people not wasting so much time on transporting themselves? I had this discussion with a colleague, and he said, oh yeah, that'll be great. Then I can do stuff in my car and stuff like that. And I was quickly to say, but won't we just have virtual offices at that time? Or what? Will we actually transport ourselves to a faraway location at that point? Or will we just be using a virtual office space instead? It's just, there's some kind of, it's kind of flawed the way that we are doing it right now, right? I'm using at least a couple of hours of my day on actually transporting myself back and forth instead of being productive, being with my family or doing work.
Well, I wanted to follow up on your whole thing about we're not going to have cars, because I was talking about it with someone the other day, just thinking through of like, when we don't have cars, because like here in Texas and most of the U.S., often we have garages, right? So our homes are even bigger, and suddenly we can either shrink the size of the home and save more money, or I can suddenly close in my garage and my house is worth that much more value, and I can use it for other things. Besides, there's so many other things, and actually, before we did the podcast, we were talking a little bit about Jackie brought up the whole switch from horses to cars, and different people, got pay jobs, and they didn't not every blacksmith turned into a mechanic, right? No. But generally speaking, society as a whole was much better off because we're using our not our things more efficiently, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the general principle of, I think the Optimist is saying, it may not be, even though they say no one is hurt and everyone wins. I don't know if they would actually take that stance entirely, but I would say that has to do more with the rising tides raise all ships, right? That like overall, we're going to see a benefit in productivity, better utilization of our utilities, the environment, and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me go ahead and jump on here with the total effect on unemployment numbers. So the Optimist is saying more jobs created. The Relativist is saying it depends. And the Pessimist says jobs destroyed. Again, I think we've rehashed this a couple times already, is there will, I think it's definitely, there will be some, I wouldn't say more jobs created. I would say different, higher paying, more interesting jobs created. Having said that, with what we just mentioned a couple minutes ago, about like the whole country or the world having a better use of utilities, it can possibly lead to more, because things get cheaper, right? And more people might build businesses because prices drop because we're doing things more efficiently. So I do get that angle. More jobs could be created. I would fall more personally more into the relativist of it depends.
Yeah. On this one, I'm also on the it depends, because I'm seeing here where the thing that we are kind of developing is actually something that's doing the human's job. Yeah, I know before we have made machines who made the human's job relatively obsolete, or so you don't need to have a machinist actually standing and doing the metal work because you have a machine that's doing it. Yeah, there I'm seeing it, but here where you're almost substituting directly a human with a virtual piece of software, I'm not seeing where the software will make an equal amount of jobs from what it's doing. Because if the human was already doing it, where's the jobs that he was creating? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we're just substituting a human with a machine and he's losing his job,
Yeah.
how's the machine actually making a new job for him?
I think I can argue from the Optimist side is to say, well, that company was paying him $100,000 a year, and now it's $5,000 for using the machine. They now have more money to go out and do something different and create a whole different thing, right? That they didn't before.
Yeah, and what I have a colleague who is the clear pessimist.
Yeah.
Here, he would immediately say that amount of money would go straight to the shareholders.
Which is, again, and I would say, okay, that's fine. Well, what are they going to do with their money? They're going to either go spend it, right? Which means they're going to buy something they didn't have before, which means someone else is going to sell something they didn't have, wouldn't have been able to buy, someone to buy. Or they're going to put it in the bank, which the bank, generally speaking, they loan the money out, and so more businesses have money. So I would still say that's okay, even if they don't. If it goes straight out the door instead of creating a job at that company, I still agree with, which I think is part of your main point. If you were that guy that got cut because of it, it doesn't necessarily help you get a job, but it still might add jobs overall.
It might, and the thing with this, and I don't really have an opinion per se on that, but the thing that this pessimist at work would say is that it would just make richer people even richer.
Sure.
So they would make so much money that they wouldn't actually spend that much more.
Yeah.
So if let's say that this guy, he got 100,000, he would use it all, but the really rich person who would get 100,000 more,
I understand.
He will not necessarily use 100,000 more.
Yeah. But again, he'd put it, their chances are they're not going to stick it in a safe at their house, right? Again, they would put it probably in a bank or in the, the stock market or something, right?
Yeah, hopefully, because if they just stuck it in a bank, it is just what I'm saying. It's one person or because if you're saying 3 people over here lost 300,000 and a single person over here actually got it, and he only uses 100,000 of them, and the rest of them he just keeps in his fortune to give to his kids later or whatever, you could see the money as being pulled out of the market, right? Not that I'm saying it is, because you can always find the money somewhere. It's kind of like energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, anyway, I think you could still argue that like it definitely can grow because people can use that money in a lot of ways to invest or to do other things.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that it can't do that.
Yeah. All right, let's go. I got to run here in a bit. Let's get to the next
absolutely.
one here. Yeah. Effects on jobs and skill wages. Was this I think this is yours.
Effects on jobs and skills and effects on job skills and wages. So the optimist would say new jobs require greater skill, warranting higher wages. And the relativist would say it depends. And the pessimist would say fewer jobs lead to more employment competition, which lowers wages. So, yeah. Again, to me, it kind of, if you look at the optimist, new jobs require greater skill, warranting higher wages, unless, as the pessimist says, there's more with that greater skill. The thing is, you won't immediately, the first year, that something, let's say that Amazon or whoever it might be, big players, actually come out with something that can just automate all phone centers, just to keep that alive. You will have such a high rate of people who are just all of a sudden out of a job,
right?
Who's good at actually taking phone calls.
It's the blacksmiths that we talked about with the horse to car. There's suddenly a huge number of people that had this skill set.
Yeah, and again with this one, it isn't actually something you can do. You can't just take your phony experience or what's right? Yeah, and apply it to
center.
Everything else. Yeah, because hey, who says there's actually a need for that?
And that's what I would. Sorry, go ahead and finish your thought. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
So what I was going to say, what I would add to this, what they need to do is to say new jobs require greater skills, warranting higher wages for X people, right? Because it's a certain group of people, and it probably more often than not isn't the people that actually lost their job, whatever, right? Like those have a different skill set. They are, I do agree, it's a higher level and higher pay and this and that. Because I think the fewer jobs lead more. I think that's true for the Y group of people, right? It's a different group of people in each group. There's probably more people in the pessimist side than there are in the optimist side, because that's the whole point, right? Is you have you're minimizing the paying of people money, or at least the total dollars spent. But I do think that they are different groups of people, and that's what's not real. It makes it sound like it's the same group of people, and I don't think that's what's happening or would happen.
No, again, I don't think that you can take the people who become unemployed by automation and say that they automatically are the ones who will get the new jobs. But if, let's say you have, I'm just saying a number, 1 million people who are unemployed, and then all of a sudden you have 1 million more who becomes unemployed within a month or 2 or 3 or a year, finding 1 million jobs for the other 1 million that was already unemployed. Do you get what I'm saying? That's where I'm putting time into it, because society and the work and companies and all that need to adopt to that new amount of workers. So just automating something and putting all of these people out of employment, it will take some time, but I do believe it will happen.
I totally agree. I just got a text saying that they're running late, so I don't have to feel like I'm in a burning hurry here. I actually have a great specific example for you to consider. So back in whenever, what is it, the 60s, when here in the U.S., when women suddenly entered the workforce en masse, right? It suddenly went to where the number of people trying to get jobs here in the U.S., greatly went up, the competition. And so labor, your average pay went down because suddenly you had all these people suddenly going, hey, I'll stop staying home with the kids and I'm going to go get a job. And you really did see this effect, which is what they're describing in that one, right? It definitely, supply and demand, right? I don't think you can argue with that.
No, and it might coincide pretty well because some stuff will become cheaper because of the automation, and some people will get lower pay because blah, blah, blah. But I still believe that society won't just tip over and every unemployed person will just torch every employed person's house because, hey, anarchy. No, I don't see society really going that far with how the world kind of works now. But again, it depends on how quickly it happens, because again, if parents are kind of having starving kids, and things can become extreme at some point, and of course that's then things can kind of start tipping over.
And you and I are both big advocates of this. This is why you need everyone encourage them to keep learning, right? Never just sit on your laurels and coast, because suddenly you can end up realizing you're in a tough spot and it's harder to find a job, or do whatever, or you have to take a pay cut or not get a pay raise or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Invest in yourself. It's worth it.
Sure. Absolutely.
I was kind of hoping you had the next one and not me.
No, effects on democracy.
Yeah.
Increases democracy. It depends. Decreases democracy. Technology used to segregate and control. And this is on the pessimist side. This is one of the ones that I recently started to tell people about, because I saw, I haven't seen, but I have read and watched shows and other things where, yes, if like in the European Union, we have this GDPR law, where the General Data Protection Act, right? And the thing is that a company can't store specific data about you without your permission. And other data, really, really specific data, is just prohibited unless the company has a real legitimate reason for having that information. And some of that information is your race, your political belief, and a few other things like those, because of the pessimist thing here. If big enough companies, let's just put Google on it, had that information about almost everybody in Denmark who they leaned towards politically, and they sold that to someone who had to do with politics, a politician would be able to send different messages to everybody. So you might believe that he was for this, and someone else would believe he was for this. And both would actually vote on him, but on totally different grounds. And that's one of the big issues with technology today and democracy as a whole, because you actually need these things to be out there so they can be peer reviewed. So that's how democracy has worked up until now.
I'd like to clarify something that you just discussed, because let's stick with businesses instead of politics, right?
Yeah.
But either way, it works equally on each one. As long as I don't have a problem if the politicians are doing what you say they're, what the scenario you just did, as long as they just decided to stress a different point. If let's say let's say we wanted the Berlin Wall down, right? That was the issue, and we know some people are on one side and some people other. If you target people, if we do it the bad way, the way I don't want, and say, oh, the people that don't want it down, I'm going to target them and say Jackie is not for this, and then we're going to target the opposite side and then say Jackie is for this, right? That's straight up lying, right? It's you're totally not representing the position of the, actually maybe that is position of the politician, because who knows how they actually stand. But
that's the thing. But to me, with the pessimistic side here is that because of technology and the direct message that with the right information you could get directly to me, it could be in my Facebook feed only, in my email box only. So nobody outside of my brain sphere would know what that politician had told me.
Right. Well, and
so he could lie just as much as he wanted.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is, like, obviously I'm not for that. Now, if they just said, hey, with this one group of people, they care about that people are starving, and so we want it down. So they're going to talk about how important it is that people get fed. And with the other group of people who want the wall up, we're going to talk about employment, right? And they're not completely two different messages. We're just stressing different points, right? That's where I'm like, I don't have as hard of a time with that. Because businesses, that's the whole point of a business, right? Is to specifically target on a business perspective, what your company, what your product does and what attribute, your selling attributes.
And to me, that's fine. That's also why I find it's easy if you do it with something like businesses and selling a product and stuff like that. And I know that the politics or a specific candidate or something like that can also be seen as the same thing. The thing I'm talking about here might not fit exactly here, but when it said effects on democracy, to me, the effect is only if you have too much information on every last person, so that you can twist your views to fit exactly that person. But the problem is, right now, if you do that in media and you say one thing, the others over here who see you say that, they will know, okay, that's his opinion. But if you move all of that into the closed space that is directed directly at the consumer or directly at the person, nobody can really weigh out what the person is saying. And that's why I'm leaning a little bit pessimistically on the last one. It could have negative effect on
I'm with you. I don't think it would increase I don't see how it would increase democracy. I don't understand that argument. I only see the negative side of it. I just don't see how it would in any way increase democracy.
No, that's the thing. Yeah.
But it's also one. What was that?
I just said, and then we actually got through them.
Yeah. What I was going to say was, I could have happily have erased that last line from this chart, personally, because I'm like, it's just very different. To me, it doesn't quite fit with everything else. I'm not sure how it made the cut on their chart, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of pulled out because all of the rest of it has kind of felt like humanity and technology, and democracy might be something to do with humanity, but not really with employment and not the way that we've seen the rest of these.
Yeah.
So it's very specific on a specific political thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that was a fun, really, I mean, to me, it is an interesting discussion. And as with anything, depending on how you view it, what you saw, we just some things I was leaning very hard on, and other things I was more in the middle of the road on interpreting them. So I don't think there is a quote unquote right and wrong answer to any of them. It's just, it depends on your perspective, right, of how you view things.
Yeah, and that's how it is, right? And the real issue will be if you get into too high of an effect. So you get this skewing of let's say employment. So if too many people are too quickly becoming unemployed, so society, or whatever you would call that, can't adapt with creating new jobs, because however you look at it, it actually takes just a little time to do that. So yeah.
You know, I did think of something I want to add to this, and it was, we touched on it a bit earlier, but is, to me, the whole thing of, hey, with RPA or, you know, technology and automation coming in, do we need to worry about it? What should we do? Should we allow us? Like, the point's moot. It's coming, right?
Yeah.
It's whether your country or your city or your state, whatever does it, that's one thing. But you know what? There's no way everyone on the planet is just going to be suddenly like, oh, it's not good for humanity, I'm not going to do it, right? That isn't going to happen. And so the reality is, someone's going to do it. And if someone's going to do it, hopefully, you know, you're smart enough to say, well, then I'm going to be part of that, instead of just saying that's bad for everybody, and so I'm not going to endorse it.
And the thing is, even the people at the forefront of technology, I can't remember who it was, but maybe it was Elon Musk or whatever it was. He had kind of pointing out, so within a few years, everything will be able to be done by a computer, and it's not maybe weeks ago or something where he actually came out and said, okay, I might have put too much faith in what the computer can do at this time.
Yeah.
There's no reason to not believe that it won't happen. It is just a matter of time. So if it's not today and if it's not tomorrow, then it will be next year. But it will happen, and there's no real reason to kind of believe it won't.
Yeah, that the RPA, I'm not concerned with its effect on humanity. The AI, artificial intelligence and cognitive intelligence stuff, that when it becomes, I don't think it's that far off. Let's say 5 years. In 5 years, that's going to really be suddenly possibly removing real humans from doing a lot of jobs. Maybe it's a little further off to where it gets scaled, right, where the price drops enough where everyone can be using it. But that is coming.
As I've listened to a few TED Talks about people who are really at the forefront of AI, and all of them are saying that general AI, general intelligence, is still ways off. Nobody can predict how fast it will go when it kind of takes off.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's deep learning, it's machine learning, and the different types of levels, and that's still exponentially getting better. So at some point, all of these deep learning and other algorithms will work so well that they can become not general intelligence, because it still needs more than just that.
Yeah.
But at those tasks where you need to find, let's say, the connection between something and something. Why is crime always higher on Thursdays? The computer will actually be able to give you a good idea of why that is. Or why do people always choose that toilet paper roll? Whatever it might be. They can take in all the numbers and actually crunch them in record time and give companies or whoever wants it valued feedback on things that we would have absolutely no chance of ever catching, because we can see quite a lot of things, but not with that amount of data.
Yeah, and I would say I would change what you just said. where we can like, my background's a data scientist, right? If we have the data, I know how to go do some of that stuff, but it's not a painful process, but it takes time and energy to do it, right? And what you're describing, I totally agree with. It's going to get to a point where you just ask the computer and it can spew out some pretty good solutions at the blink of an eye.
Not long ago, I saw a documentary on, I can't remember the city, that had actually implemented one of these systems that kept getting news about where stuff was happening, where people were being marked, where accidents were happening and all of that. And it had also been fed with data for quite a few years of cases and murders and all of what criminal data the city had. And this is a live system that's actually running today out there. And it's now pointing where patrols should emphasize their time.
Yeah.
So, and it seems to be working.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
And at least what the documentary said, that all of the data needed to actually crunch and do that almost live isn't really humanly possible. You could do it and you could make a report, but you would actually use maybe a few days on making it, where it's taking in everything and actually directing things almost real time. And that's where the difference lies with that one thing as well.
I haven't received it yet, but I ordered this book, which is the robotic processing cognitive automation, the next phase, but it's the cognitive automation. So I'm really interested to see what they have in this. This is the same authors I've been reading. This was the other one, the risk mitigation. That's the one I'm currently reading, which I borrowed a little bit of stuff from. But these guys are doing a really good job of talking through things and document, and then they have 8 million citations, which is what I really love. Is I got all these other books on the way, and I'm reading. But it's what an amazing world. In 10 years from now, it's going to be a wild scenario.
Yeah, I've done the thought process a few times of actually looking back on my own life, and now it's more than 10 years, because it was actually in 2007 where the iPhone 1 was released, right? The thing that kind of set off smartphones. So we didn't have those 12 years ago. We did have mobile phones, but 10 years before then, we didn't really have those.
No,
you could get a satellite phone, but you didn't actually have mobile phones. And not because I've been living that long, but 10 years before then, you didn't actually have private computers. So again, 10 years really, really moves the bar, right? So looking 10 years ahead, it's really, really hard to actually fathom what we might have then.
I would even argue it's speeding up. The process of change is even at a faster rate, right, than what it was 10 years ago. So the changes we'll see 10 years from now are going to be greater than what they were 10 years ago, right? I'm not going to say it's exponential growth, but it definitely seems to be, I don't envision the AI stuff taking that much longer to get. I still don't think they're going to be creating programs or writing programs and being a person. I don't see that right away, but being able to do much more of a typical job, I do think that's not that far off.
No. The thing with AI is still the singularity, as they call it, where some people hear the singularity as something being sentient or aware of itself, and that's not what all of the AI people are saying, but it is still a thing that's acting on its own. Do you get what I'm getting at with that? So an AI system will extend out from what the human has actually set it out to do.
So that was, I haven't read it yet, but this is, I think, a big part of what that was based off of.
So the singularity, which is an AI system doing something that a human hasn't asked it to do. That is how I kind of define that. And there's a lot of grim stuff with that, but it could just be a system asked to find cat photos, and all of a sudden it's just found all images instead. And taken whatever kind of action it was supposed to take on that. I can say what it might be, but yeah, I think you get what I'm getting at. The singularity is a program acting outside of what humans actually.
I think it would be kind of ironic if the first thing that reaches that level actually does start getting hooked onto cat videos and watches them more than humans. That would be very fun.
Whatever it might be. Yeah, I recently heard. I don't know if you read that, but it might be maybe last year or something, where two chatbots had found each other and chatting, and within minutes they'd actually developed their own language from the few responses that they had.
Wow, that's interesting.
And within a few hours, they were communicating at a speed, saying stuff that people didn't know what was, but they seemed to understand one another, and then they were shut down.
Wow, that's fascinating.
But it was just, they were at least telling each other something, and they had very limited responses, but they just changed them and put a lot of heys and hellos and highs and good days after each other, and that apparently meant something. Who knows if it actually meant something, but it was doing it, and the other one was responding. With something. So,
yeah, interesting. Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's wrap this up. I think that was a fun, interesting chat.
Yeah, absolutely, John.
All right. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Bye.